Hey, you are listening to Oh Crap Parenting with me, your host, Jamie Glowacki. This is a podcast for conscious parents who drop the F-bomb a lot.
All right, before we get started with this episode, I do have an exciting announcement. Well, it's exciting for me. It may not be exciting for you. I have decided to merge Oh Crap Parenting with Oh Crap Potty Training. The new name will be Oh Crap with Jamie. I know, I'm so clever, right? Nothing will change for you who are listening to Oh Crap Parenting. What this will look like is I will sprinkle in potty training episodes probably once a month, maybe twice a month. Depends on if I have a lot of interviews, if I need to speak to potty training a little bit more. But I will label these clearly as potty training episode. So they will be very easy for you to skip over if you're not interested in potty training content. I know a lot of you came here for the potty training and you stayed for the parenting, and your kids are beyond the age of potty training. So I just wanted to merge them for ease of me. It just makes it easier on me and my team, but it also really helps my potty training people because, as you know, veterans of potty training, that potty training doesn't happen in a vacuum. And so many of the parenting topics I talk about, have to do with the family dynamic and the climate of the house and how we deal with our kids in general. So it will be helpful for everybody. And again, nothing will change for you guys except the name of the show. And there will be clearly marked episodes that say potty training so you can skip over or share them with people who might be in the trenches that you have gleefully climbed out of. All right, let's move on to today's episode. Hey guys, welcome. Very excited about this episode today. I sat down to record and I was like, ooh, because I want to talk about 5. Let's talk about the age of 5 and how crazy making and bewildering 5 can be. Before I do so, though, I am still recovering from a really bad cold. I know everybody's sick, but this cold hit me like a freight train and still lingering. So excuse my nose blowing and or coughing. I did want to tell you guys about a couple of milestones here over in my house. So Pascal took his first cross-country flight solo by himself, and he also got approved for his first credit card, like a real one, not like a kid one, not like a secure one. And I didn't sign off or anything. So I was like, oh my God, these are like big milestones. And it really had me thinking, in talking with friends and stuff, we often talk about like overparenting, right? And I think, I don't know, the rhetoric I see online really points to millennial parents, but I really think it's Gen X that's at fault. And as I've mentioned before on this podcast, like Gen X loves to talk a really great game of, we were raised on garden hose water and neglect. And, we were really it was benign neglect. And of course, when I use these, millennial Gen X, I'm talking roughly, I do like these categorizings of, is that the right word? Categorizing sort of ages and generations, because it's just easier to refer to, but none of these are hard stops. But what I have noticed is it's really the Gen X parents who kind of started the whole overparenting trend because we were underparented. So our parents had their parties, they had their friends, like kids were just kind of secondary. And we always laugh at that commercial. There was literally a commercial that said it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your kids are? And all kinds of stars did it. It's like our parents forgot they had kids. And I know, my house had its particular dramas. We had a rough childhood. So my mom definitely was preoccupied with other things, but we, I think, started the whole train of overparenting again because we were underparented. So no matter what, parents are going to try to make up for what they didn't have. It's natural, right? We want our kids to have the things we didn't have. So we tend to overparent. And I've worked really hard against that. And especially as a single mom, knowing that as a single mom, not really having somebody to bounce ideas off of to balance female energy with a boy. I really was conscious of this and letting Pascal take risks and doing things. But I did have this moment, as he's in his later teens now, where I am finding this extreme joy in being there for him for things that we were kind of left to our own devices. So I traveled young, and Lord Almighty, I still don't know how we did it without the internet. My sister remembers like having to write to youth hostels a month in advance, you know. I don't know how we did these trips to Europe without the internet, but we did. And my mother had never traveled, so she definitely couldn't offer advice. I do remember my mom, when I had to make a resume for the first time, my mom was like, well, just put your experience, you know. There was kind of no guidance. And so one thing that I am enjoying without the overparenting aspect is being there for Pascal for these things, you know. So he was taking his first solo flight, which is exciting. And, you know, I had to walk him through check-in on the phone, how that works, how to get your boarding passes, how to pay for bags if you need to. And he missed a connection. He had a very tight connection and one flight was delayed. So he ended up missing that flight. So he got stuck at the airport for like 8 hours. And he's traveled with me extensively, so I wasn't really concerned. He knows how to look up the flights on the board, the arrivals and departures and things like that. But it was still like, okay, here we go. And he did great. And he called me, you know, he's like, he literally texted me, he said, Mom, I'm fucked. I'm going to miss this flight. And I was like, all right, it's cool. Just go to the gate agent, you know, we'll figure it out. And he had already made it. He was going to Oregon to go snowboarding, and he had already made it to Salt Lake City. So I was like, well, chances of getting a flight to Oregon from Salt Lake City are much higher than like if you got stuck on the East Coast. So he ended up having a blast. And same thing with his like credit card application. He was like, I feel like I need to start building my credit. And I was like, okay, very good. And he looked, and I said, you know, let's compare the rewards programs and the APRs and all these things. And so he made a choice and he submitted his application, and that all went through. And then he had to make a resume, maybe 6 months ago. And it was great. Like we sat down I mean, my first resume, we didn't have even Google templates, right? So I can't even imagine what my first resume looked like. But I love being there for these actual guidance things. And so I just kind of wanted to put it in your hopper. I know if you're listening to this, typically your kids are probably younger, but pay attention to these milestones. They're very exciting. And I think it's a way that we can kind of marry both worlds, like not overparenting, but being there for our kids when they need some guidance, when they need these teaching things, you know, like could he have figured out how to check in, you know, to a flight on his own? Yeah, of course he probably could have, but how nice to have your mom there and to be there. You know, when he missed the flight, I picked up the call and I was like, all right, just, you know, don't sweat it. You've done that. We've done this before. We've missed flights. You know, he hadn't slept much. I said, find an area of the airport and take a nap. And so anyway, I think it's a great way. I think it's a good example, and not that I'm all that, because of course I make my own parenting mistakes, but I think it's a great example of like showing up for our kids in a way that our parents may not have shown up for us without going overboard and without over-parenting in that way that's like almost crippling our kids. All right, so let's talk about 5. I have been working with a lot of people who are just flummoxed by 5. You know, you come out of the toddler years and you think, shit, I got to get a break, right? Because toddlers are they're just chaos. They're so chaotic, and they're fun, but you never know, right? You zig, they zag. They're explosive, they're volatile, and it's all very normal. But you come out of that, and so many people think 5 is like the promised land. When they're 5, they'll be almost close to kindergarten. They'll be this, they'll be that. But what happens, I've always known 5 was a very difficult age. Years ago, I knew it was a difficult age. And I always thought it was because 5 is somehow the kids start to feel more autonomous. They start to feel like they got it. They want to do all the things by themselves. They have opinions now. They can articulate those opinions, but they're still little. And so you still have to really help them. And their executive functioning is not online. So you have to remind them of things that you think you shouldn't have to remind them of. And there's all these things going on. And now we know that there's a thing called the limbic leap. And I have some notes here in case I get off track. So if I'm looking down, that's what I'm doing. And the limbic leap usually happens between 4 and 5 years old. It is very safe to say that post-pandemic kids right now, I hesitate to use the word behind because I think I think it's a judgment word. I don't think they're behind, but milestones are later. We just know that. And so we can speculate forever why that might be true. But I think the limbic leap for a lot of people is really happening closer to 5 rather than 4. And the limbic system is what is responsible for emotions, memory, social bonding. And what happens is it develops like super rapidly in these age, the 4 to 5 range. And we have these leaps. These leaps will be throughout your childhood, right? We know how different your 1-year-old is from your 2-year-old and how different your 2-year-old is from your 3-year-old, right? And then we have these kind of coasting ages where like, not a whole lot happens, you know? But 5, I think, seems especially egregious because it's like, I thought we'd have more communication. But what ends up happening is because of this rapid growth, the brain just goes kind of haywire and it goes crazy. And we see this in teen years too. Like a lot of what goes on with teenagers, people default to it being hormonal changes, which yes, that is happening. But Daniel Siegel has a great book about the teenage brain. It's really chaos in their brain right now. And things, again, are online, offline. They're not consistent. So like executive functioning at 12, your kid may have tons of executive functioning, be able to handle lists of things to do and get to it. And then all of a sudden at 13, 14, they lose it. And I have seen this consistently with Pascal, even at 18 and a half now, is like, there's some days that it's just not there. Their brains are also so preoccupied. They're so self-centered. Kids are just by nature so self-centered. And this really comes out in teenage. There's so much going on, but it's really this like chaotic brain development that's responsible, not so much the hormonal fluxes. And so what we want to do, when we have 4 and 5-year-olds and they have this rapid limbic growth, we want to be aware of what potentially could be happening. Number one, and first and foremost, is emotional sensitivity. This is huge. Now, if you have had, let's talk about emotional sensitivity, because what I'm seeing in clients and friends is that what it looks like is almost going back to tantrums. Like you say something and your child is so dramatic, any sort of reprimand, anything quote unquote bad that comes out of your mouth, the child will fall out, cry, have a tantrum. Now what we want to look at as a whole is, and we've talked about this in tantrum episodes here, but tantrums at 15 months, 2 years, they're very developmentally normal because the child, there's something going on and the child can't articulate. The quickest response is impulsivity and right? They don't have the wherewithal to say, no, mommy, I really wanted to peel the banana myself. Instead, you peel the banana and they lose their shit. And that happens, right? And then when we get into 3 and 4, tantrums really should be leveling out once in a while, of course, especially if they're tired or hungry or overstimulated, or, you know, for whatever reason, they're a little like under themselves, you know, but you shouldn't be having endless tantrums that bring down the house at 3, 4. And so what typically happens, if you are seeing tantrums, that's something to look into. You can, try to book a consult with me, but you want to look at food allergies. You want to look at, what's happening in the maybe school environment, preschool environment. You want to check in on some things because that shouldn't be happening. And a lot of times there's gut imbalances that can cause the brain to go crazy. So there's a lot that can be going on there. But for most parents, they do see this like tantrums at 2, kind of fades off at like 3 and 4. And occasionally you'll still see tantrums or this crazy behavior. And then all of a sudden at 5, it comes back and they're like, what the hell happened? Why is everything so dramatic? Well, these kids have this increased emotional sensitivity, and it means they're moody, easily frustrated, and prone to meltdowns. They also sometimes get heightened anxiety and fear, like things that never bothered them all of a sudden do. Oh, I can't sleep by myself. They're afraid of the dark. Suddenly they won't talk to people when before they were super friendly. So that can happen. They can start to have greater empathy. Typically somewhere around the age of 9 is when I call it the veil lifts. That's when children start to become really aware of other people's plights. That's when your child may really start to notice homeless people or children that are hungry or children that have less than them. They may start, they see that there's a world outside of them, and that brings its own challenges, because how overwhelming is that as a kid? Like, oh, like you've been in this protective bubble, and now all of a sudden you see the injustices of the world. This also happens at 5. And that's why a lot of times at 5, you'll see this whole justice thing. Like, siblings have to get the same amount of milk in the cup. And, he had the blue plate yesterday. It's my turn. That you start to see this like real sense of justice and injustice. And so they have greater empathy. However, they have a decreased ability to regulate their own emotions. So imagine having empathy for people, but not being able to control your own regulation. So that kind of puts parents at odds, because they're like, oh my God, my kid is, she feels for other kids, but then she's a disaster herself, right? It's kind of this paradox. They also have more impulsivity, and they're going to test boundaries. And again, that comes with that autonomy, which is like, I can do this myself. I'm going to try to get the knife out of the drawer. I'm going to try these things that you told me no. And again, anytime there's these rapid growths in brain development, we're going to see chaos, which leads to great impulsivity. So just, I feel like just knowing half of these things, they also now move into true social friendships. So their friends may take precedence of what their friends are thinking. A lot of times with little girls, we see more consciousness of like fashion, what everybody's wearing, what everybody's talking about, right? We start to see these gaggles of girls hanging together, boys hanging together. So we start to see that gender separation, and that really it's just a part of it. So a couple of things that you can do to mitigate 5 and all this drama. We want to support their increased need for autonomy. We want to support them thinking they've got life by the horns, right? We don't want to knock that out of them, because then you have a needy kid and you're overparenting, and we get no growth. And so supporting autonomy, for a lot of parents, they think that's offering choices, letting the child like do more. And that is true. That does help. But when we think of a child doing more, what we want to do is start assigning them harder chores, harder tasks to help around the house. That may mean like, okay, you know what? You're 5 now. I think you can help me with the big knife. Can you go to the drawer and show me how you're going to get the knife out and carry it safely over to the counter? I'd like to supervise you so you can start doing this on your own. This is making their own sandwiches, cutting fruit. If, you have the knife sets like from Amazon that are kid friendly, you want them. I always say helping in the kitchen. Always helping in the kitchen is the best way. But hey, can you go get the laundry? We really want them. We want them as part of the household community, like we talk about endlessly on this podcast. That is giving them autonomy without necessarily being like, oh, do you want to choose this or this? At 5 years old, they really should be choosing their own outfits, regardless of how crazy they may look. They want some autonomy in that area. So we want to look at these places where we can boost them up without necessarily pandering to them in like I think offering choices is great for kids at any age, but there's also like, what do I want to say? There is a pandering to kids, like, oh, do you want to choose your cup for dinner? Like, that's ridiculous for a kid who's really craving doing something on their own, where that is where maybe an unsupervised chore. Do you think you can handle putting the clothes in the washer and starting it? Great. Thank you. That is so helpful. That is honest and sincere, and it's boosting them up a level. So look, every house is different. Every setup is different. So I'll leave that to you. But that is definitely having them do things that are not supervised, that they can handle on their own. And it puffs them up. They're like, yeah. But again, it puffs them up in a community way where it's like, I'm helping. I feel important. I feel part of this family. And what I do is super important. And we'll go back to a thing I talked about, I don't know how long ago. This is a great age where you should start giving your child something you want to, and you can lie, because my stepdad lied about it. We want to make them the best at something. Okay. So like, oh my God, nobody washes clothes. When you wash the clothes, they come out cleaner. Then the kid's going to be like, I am the only one in the universe who can wash the clothes. And that's how we lock them into certain chores. And I told this story before. My stepdad, when I was 11, told me I made the best coffee. He was like, don't tell your mother. She doesn't even make the best cup of coffee. You make me the best cup of coffee. He got up at 5. I got up at 4:45 to make my stepdad his coffee because I made it the best. And that was like my honor and my duty to make him the best cup of coffee. And I didn't think twice about it. And even after I found out he was hoodwinking me, I still had pride. I was like, yeah, but for all those years, I made you your cup of coffee. And so this is a wonderful idea to work with kids. And again, you can kind of fudge the details, of course, but it gives them so much pride to think that they are contributing to the house or contributing to life. Oh, shit, I just lost power, guys. Okay. That's what my lighting just went out. We're having a big ice storm. So I don't have power right now. But anyway, I'll continue recording. So it boosts them up in this like really fantastic way. Now, another thing we want to talk about, this is a key age for self-regulation. And one of the things that I've been so adamant about in my work is that emotional wisdom, emotional intelligence, self-regulation, these are things that should be incorporated into the fabric of our daily life. And what we tend to think is we're parenting, and then there are these like tasks. Oh, they need to learn how to self-regulate. But these should just be daily things. One thing I have said on, here and on Instagram that people have given me such great feedback, a rebounder, these mini trampolines, they're great for women, especially if you are entering perimenopause or menopause. They're great for bone density. There is something so regulating about them. And I got one for bone density. I love it. I jump on it. Pascal, it's in my room. They take up quite a lot of, real estate, so be aware of that. But he'll come into my room and just start jumping and all of a sudden start talking to me about all kinds of random feelings and things that are going on with him. I've had friends visit and their kids love it. I've heard reports from people in the Oh Crap Cafe, our parenting online community. They're like, holy shit, I got a rebounder. My kid loves it. I love it. It is the most regulating thing. The funniest thing that happened with me and Pascal is that he has literally told me, Mom, go jump. Like, I can see you're getting, he wasn't saying the words dysregulated, but he's like, you're getting in a mood. You need to go jump. And I jump for 10 minutes and I'd be fine. So now I said, buddy, what we're doing is self-regulate. Like, we're regulating our nervous system by doing this. And so now he'll be like, you need to regulate yourself, which as an 18-and-a-half-year-old boy, what a fucking gift that is, right? So we want to teach our kids that these big feelings, these meltdowns, these, like, our brain is going a little cuckoo right now. And so we can control that. And so what you want to do with self-regulation, just like we talk about with emotional wisdom, we really want to make it a part of daily life. So in a non-hot moment, so this isn't something you do as they're melting down. It's when they're calm, usually before bed, is be like, hey, you're 5 years old now. 5 years old is a lot. A lot's happening in your brain, in your body. Like, I can trust you to do more things. You're so helpful. But also sometimes like your brain goes like, right? Like, you can tell them what's going on. And so you can explain, like, sometimes in those moments, we all need to do something that's called self-regulation. We need to figure out how to get our bodies not so crazy. And what are some ideas that you would like? So at 5 years old, we're roping them into the whole process. They may have some great ideas for you. Well, mommy, I always feel best when I'm doing a puzzle. Okay, great. Let's make a list and we're going to laminate it and we're going to keep it on the fridge. You can have a list of things to do. So in these moments, you have to tell your child, I asked you not to do that. I told you to shut off the program and you didn't. Your child falls to the floor, has a dramatic meltdown, and you say, whoa, time out. Let's go to the fridge. Let's go to the fridge and see if we can see what we can do. Okay, do you feel like doing this? Do you want to do a puzzle? Would you like to jump on the trampoline? Would you like to go outside and look at the horizon? Would you like to find 5 green things outside? You can come up with a list of things that are regulating, and again, get your child's input. Think of what you like to do. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's like, hey, do you need a cup of tea and a piece of chocolate? All right, let's sit down and have a cup of tea and a piece of chocolate. Let's just do that. Let's settle down, right? So this way you have their buy-in, but you're also making it a part of your life. It's not this, I just see parents compartmentalizing all these things and it's like, you need to learn this. Whereas no, it's just this growth process that we all learn about. Shit, I'm 56 years old and I'm still learning it. Like, I feel like a flutter and I'm like, oh, that's the flutter of dysregulation happening. Okay. And then what happens is we start to catch it earlier and earlier and earlier in our own bodies. So that way we don't reach this point of explosion. And this goes for adults, right? We get a backlog of emotions and that's what screws us up because then we're like, bleh! Right? We throw up on people. We bleed on everybody around us. But when we can start to feel that flutter of like, oh, I'm getting off track, we can regulate ourselves. And sometimes that's easy with a breath or two when you catch it early. And sometimes it's like, holy shit, I need a minute. But that is where you can tell your child as well, like, hey, I see you're having a big feeling. I would like to help you. Let's go to the fridge. And if your child's still falling out, you say, then, you know what? I'm starting to get dysregulated, which means I'm not going to be helpful to you either. Come on to my room. Let's jump on the bed together. Something like that you can engage your child with or model that you yourself need to be regulated. And these are terms that your 5-year-old should know. Dysregulated, regulated, right? Connected. How many times have I said this? Like, tell your child, I feel disconnected from you. They may not get the depth of what that means, but they know. And then you've given your child the emotional language to say, Mommy, I feel disconnected from you. Can we have some time? What is better than that? Because what's going to happen is if they don't have that language and they don't have those words, what's going to happen is it's going to come out in behavior. That's the term acting out. Kids act out these behaviors because they don't have the words. We want to give them the words, and the words can be the words, right? We don't have to use euphemisms. You don't have to just say, settle your body. You can say, whoa, there's some dysregulation happening. What can we do to help your body get more regulated? And then you're giving your child the best fucking gift. Like, well, imagine if we had this as parents. I mean, when we were kids, we wouldn't have needed so much therapy. That's for sure. So those are some really great ways. I think helping them be more autonomous and making, excuse me, I'm so passionate. I'm like losing my voice. When we can help our children learn to self-regulate, and this goes for all the ages. I just think 5 is a particularly dramatic age. And I think it's a great age where there's a lot of understanding and they have that empathy for other people. They're just struggling themselves. And I think that there's a lot more. You don't want to overtalk. Like by overtalk, I mean mini therapy sessions. It's not like, how are you feeling? Sometimes it's not about that. Sometimes there's bigger conversations about, maybe dressing to look like their friends. Maybe that's a conversation about peer pressure. And, you can be your own person, but they have a better understanding, even though it's not fully there. So, it's such a tricky age because they can understand a lot, but the depth of the understanding may not fully be there, but just say the words anyway. And then the autonomy. I think those are 2 of the things that are the most important, and having conversations. What about regulation? What do you think helps your body settle? When you're upset, what do you like to do? And then the same thing goes for you, because the biggest problem I see in parenting is parents don't know how to self-regulate. We weren't taught. A lot of people didn't start to do their personal work till they became parents. And so we're trying to learn these things about ourselves in the midst of parenting these wildly chaotic little brains that are so triggering because they're going through their shit. We're going through our shit. And so that's the best gift. Start to really recognize when you start getting dysregulated. And that's where you have to interrupt. When your child's having an emotional reaction, when your child is being emotionally volatile, I think more important than teaching them the skill is modeling the skill of like, I feel myself starting to dysregulate and I will not be helpful to you. I'm going to go take a minute and jump on my trampoline, or you can jump on the bed, or I'm going to go outside for a minute. Would you like to come with me? They can come with you as long as they're, not triggering you more, but modeling that behavior, finding the things. I'm going to sit and knit quietly while you're having your big feelings. If you would like to help me, I can show you, it's always great to start kids on handwork, stitching, finger knitting, that kind of thing. That could be very calming to your child. I'm going to sit and draw. I'm having some big feelings myself now. I'm going to sit and draw some of my feelings. Would you like to come sit and draw with me? These can be highly regulating. And again, because it's not the crazy tantrum of 2 years old, these tantrums are more like, the 5-year-old tantrums are almost more like Tourette's. Like it's like an impulsive reaction. Whereas I think kids, younger tantrums are harder to deal with because they're kind of no rationale. It's really like, ooh, the kids just kind of like not even knowing what they want. So anyway, I hope that helps. I hope that demystifies 5. I know a lot of parents in our OCRAP cafe community were like, damn, I thought 5 was going to be easier. It won't. I do find that you do get a little coast at 6 or 7. 6 and 7, I think, are just kind of those like, okay, not a whole lot's going on in the brain, not a whole lot's happening. So you get like a little bit of rest there. I think 8 and 9 are magical. I've always said the promised land is 11. 11 is like the synapses are firing, the conversations are happening, and most kids haven't hit puberty yet. So it's like, I find with most kids, 11's the holy land. And then after that, then you enter the moodiness and the brain chaos of the teenage years. I think it's all wonderful. I think if we just embrace all of these and are armed with more connection, more curiosity, and less, like I talked about in that episode of what I do differently, looking back now on Pascal's life, and it would have been much more of this, like just being more curious about what the feelings were, less adamant about the lessons and acting properly, and less worried about creating a great human, and just being a great human with my already great human, right? And I wish I'd done a little bit more of that. And it's hard. We're in the trenches. When you're in the trenches, you're in the trenches, and it's really hard to see what life is like outside the trenches. But I do think that these conversations are super important, and the teaching that emotional wisdom, the right language, and the regulation. I think those are just so paramount. All right, you guys, as always, I super appreciate you listening. I was really excited to do this. As you can tell, I love when I have a topic that I'm like super passionate about, because then I'm like, as always, have a beautiful day and rock on.
Okay, bye everyone. Just a reminder, if you need additional resources, I have Oh Crap Potty Training. I have Oh Crap, I Have a Toddler. Those books are available everywhere you want to find a book. You can also go to my website, jamieglowacki.com, where you can book private sessions with me, buy any of my courses. Those are really geared towards potty training help. And also I'm on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook anymore, and I'm not on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, jamie.glowacki, and I do a lot of lives and usually posting a lot of good information. So those are extra resources for you. And as always, rock on. Have an awesome day.